A former Premier League player is using AI to show clubs who to sign. During the first half of last season, Sportsmail sat down with former Premier League midfielder Matt Oakley and the professor behind a recruitment tool that, they believe, will revolutionize the way in which clubs obtain and retain players. In short, their technology tells you what will happen, not what has happened. We needed convincing. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, almost every forecast made came to fruition. They spoke then of how, last summer, they were asked to run a player impact report on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang prior to Arsenal's decision to award him a lucrative new contract worth £55 million over 3 years. Oakley and Professor Ian McHale of the University of Liverpool had warned how keeping the striker at the club was perhaps not a prudent move. Their system, Real Analytics, predicted that Arsenal would finish in an average of 8th position in the Premier League with Aubameyang in the squad and 9th without him. It also projected that they would score 55 goals with and 50 without. Arsenal finished 8th with a goals tally of 55. Being an Arsenal fan, like many others, we were getting excited about Mikel Arteta and the team last summer, says Oakley. Our system said otherwise, with or without Aubameyang. Real Analytics' opinion was that giving him a new contract was not worthwhile in terms of the difference it would make in the team's performance for the cost of his wages. Oakley and the team had presented us with several other reports on the back of them simulating the 2020-21 Premier League season 1 million times over. That included the data predicting Liverpool would not retain the title, while another stressed the difference Allan Saint-Maximin makes to Newcastle. According to their software, the Magpies would finish close to 17th without their talisman, as opposed to 13th with him. They ended up 12th. So how does it work? There are a lot of companies doing data, but what they basically do is simple counting. That isn't analytics, says Oakley. What Professor McHale has created, that is real AI, it has 10 years of data that is used to predict forward rather than looking back. McHale explains, the numbers that go into it are called event data. Every match has around 2,000 events. A pass is not just recorded as a pass. We have the XY coordinates of where the pass came from and where it went and who it went to. Our AI engine learns the value of every action in terms of what it contributes to the likelihood of that possession ending in a goal. Every pass, every tackle, every interception, everything is given a positive or negative score. It can be used for coaching to look at the moments where you have added value, or it can deem that you have taken value away. You can see how some players, who might be completing lots of passes, actually impact negatively on the team. But when it comes to recruitment, it is no use knowing how good a player was last week. We need our tools to be predictive. We want to know how good he will be next year, or in 5 years' time. It turns out, things like pass completion percentage reveal little about a player's future performances. We have been working on these types of models for 20 years. They were originally built for the gambling industry and designed for forecasting the outcome of matches. We realized that all the tools we were building, we could use them for the football industry, with a few tweaks. We started valuing every single event in a football match, offensive and defensive. From that, we can rate every player in European leagues and many South American leagues for every action, dribbling, crossing, passing, interceptions, clearances. We can then accumulate all of that to determine how good is this player now. And then use our forecasting backgrounds to build models to predict how good will he be in the future. It negates the risk and uncertainty for clubs when investing such large sums. Age, 43 clubs, Southampton, 1994 to 2006, Derby, 2006-08, Leicester, 2008-12, Exeter, 2012-17, International, England U21 3 caps coaching, MK Dons, 2018-19, Honours, League One 2009. It is fascinating to see the process of McHale dropping a player into a team and then running the simulations. What effect would Harry Kane alone have on Manchester United, we ask, were they to sign him from Spurs? The model runs based on the Premier League squads at the end of last season, with Kane added to United. They say Kane would increase United's points total by 6.5 and their goals tally by 12. The impact on league position is perhaps not what you would expect. United, they predict, would finish 4th. But then, they argue, that is an improvement on what was expected of United, who overperformed in finishing 2nd. Was this down to the impact of manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Interestingly, rating managers is the next project that Real Analytics are working on, something about which all clubs are now asking. But what impact does it have on Spurs, were they to sell Kane? The data shows a points loss of 5.5 and the probability of finishing in the top 4 falling from 29% to 9%. Then there are the player profiles. One useful aspect is predicting the age at which an individual will peak. For example, Oakley and McHale say Spurs' signing of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg for just £15 million from Southampton last summer was a fantastic piece of business. The Denmark international, 25, will peak aged 31 and has the potential to emerge as one of the Premier League's leading midfield players in the coming years. Oakley, who made nearly 700 senior appearances for the likes of Southampton and Leicester, says, "From my perspective as a former player, seeing what Ian can do is so exciting. This is completely different, that ability to predict the impact of results on a specific team. But it also helps in knowing when to sell a player. The analysis gives an unbiased view, all based on what a player does on the pitch." McHale, creator of the official player ratings system for the Premier League, has worked with several top-flight clubs, and several more have expressed interest in using the model, which was launched in 2020. But Oakley says, "There is a definite resistance from some managers towards data. I have seen it, but we are striving to bridge the gap between data and football. We have data on 150 leagues and 40,000 players. It is about turning that into useful information. At the moment, we believe people aren't using it to its full advantage. Real analytics should be looked at as a support to any football department to increase the speed of recruitment, reduce the risk of poor signings and strengthen the strategic decision-making of the board. That is not to say the traditional scout should be made redundant. Scouts should use data and data should use scouts. For example, a man in the stand can tell you more about body language and when a player's head drops. We know there is more to it than numbers. But I have been blown away by the accuracy of what I've seen. I remember working as an assistant manager at Exeter with no budget for analysis, and we worked out that having 10 shots per game, with around 4 on target, would allow us to win more games than we lost. I had just scratched the surface on how far analysis in sport can go. I just wish it had been around in my day, and someone could have realized how valuable all those passes I made actually were.